What's going on, everyone? This is Sheets, and we're going to do something a little bit differently this Saturday, today, for the UFC card. Usually, we record these videos Thursdays and Fridays and uh, early Saturday morning sometimes, but I'm going to do these live today. And part of it is because I sort of ran out of time to do the betting breakdown. Um, so we're going to incorporate that into this. But I'm going to spend the majority of the time on the lineup construction piece for DFS. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to pop them into the chat. And this will be my promotion of TrueDFS, actually. If you like what you see or um, have other interests in DFS and want to, I don't know, look at some things a little bit differently, check out our site. We do a pretty good job of doing a combination of teaching and selections and things like that. Anyway, that was probably the worst explanation of what TrueDFS is. So we're probably better off just to get started. Sorry about that. So UFC Des Moines. Let's talk about this for a minute. So first of all, it's a 12-fight slate, and before we even get into the lineup construction part of it, it's important to know what a 12-fight slate means for DFS. So 12-fight slate usually means that it's very difficult to get unique without going a little crazy. That means either just playing exclusively low-owned plays or leaving money on the table and doing other kinds of funny business to your lineups in the quest of becoming unique. And that's part of the fun of DFS, right? Is trying to figure out what lineups you can play that actually have a chance to win that not that many people are going to be playing. And that's very, very difficult. And in a 12-fight slate, it becomes extra difficult. Um, Nonetheless, I mean, that's what we try to do. When we deal with this big GPP, we try to use all the tools that are at our disposal to try to build lineups that have a chance to not just win money, but just to win the most money and hopefully to win a lot of money. And it's a puzzle that I continue to try to solve, and we're going to try to solve it for this slate as well. So we're not going to really get into, I guess we're going to have to, like who the best plays are. That should be sort of obvious at this point in the week. But I think it's important to understand what's going on here, specific to this slate and to DFS slates in general. So one of the issues that SaberSim and other portfolio builders have is that they're very good at building lineups and they're not very good at building portfolios of lineups. And let me give you a couple of examples. Let's take something to the extreme in UFC. Let's say there was one fight where it was a pick'em, okay? Pick'em on the board, or one was like minus 120 or something like that. And we just knew that the winner was going to score 130 fantasy points. Like it was a complete car crash type of fight. They're going to go in the middle and they're going to swing and bang. And we don't know exactly who's going to win, but the winner is going to knock the other person out in 8 seconds. And that fighter is going to score 140 fantasy points. Now, we have certain fights like that from time to time, but take this one to the extreme. Well, let's say that one of those fighters projected his median to be about 2 points higher than the other one, or is a little more likely to win than the other one. The lineup builder is going to get you way too much of that fighter. Okay, if you're going to play, saying 2, 3, 4, 5 lineups, the way you're supposed to play optimally in a situation like this, given the fact that the way the results distribute in DFS and in these tournaments, is you're supposed to play one of each. Because if you knew that one of them was going to win 140 points, you'd want to play both sides of it. That's just what you'd want to do. But even when you use SaberSim, and even when you put in the sim stuff and whatever settings you put in, or whatever settings you let it put in for, without changing it yourself, it doesn't do the greatest job of building good portfolios of lineups. Okay. So in a weird way, what that requires you to do is actually be more old school in a way. So remember, back before there was SaberSim, before there was Sim products, before there was advanced optimizers, what did you do? You told it what to do. You would say, okay, I want to get at least one of this fight, for example, whichever fight that would be. Okay. and you would put it in there. You'd say, I want 50%, at least one of these two fighters, or I want 50% of this and 50% of that. And even though you were really being primitive relative to what these new tools can do, you were actually being sort of advanced from a portfolio management perspective. So what happens is in UFC cards where you have so much negative correlation between two fighters sometimes, and the winner is going to score a ton, but you don't know who it's going to be. Using these sim products and Saber Sim, for example, is not going to really capture great portfolios. Okay, so that's what I kind of struggle with every week is how much to change what the Saber Sim models put out for me based on what I know about portfolio management. If I say, okay, I don't know who's going to win between X and Y, but I know one of them is going to win and score a ton, then I probably should go on and do stuff myself. Okay. And that's always a question that you have to struggle with. Now, with this particular slate, I don't think that that's in play, okay? Because when you go through these fights, I can't tell you for sure that the winner of a certain fight is going to score a ton. I mean, like, for example, and we'll go through this, like Sandhagen Figueiredo. I mean, usually, like, okay, give me this guy who's going to win, then I know he's going to score a ton. It's not guaranteed that Sandhagen wins at 9,500 and scores, like 130 points. Okay. And likewise, it's not guaranteed that Figgy, when he wins, is going to score like 100 points. It's just not. And those fights are not really the ones that I'm worried about. The ones that you have to usually deal with, these mid-range fights, where one guy is just going to score a ton. But this particular card, you don't have any of them. There's none of these mid-range fights with huge inside the distance lines that is going to smash. Okay, so what you need to do is actually on a card like this, should be more likely to trust the sims and to trust the various ways that you can rank things using Saber Sim. That's one thing. Second thing about this slate, and this is actually very relevant for today, that Saber Sim does well. It doesn't do a good job of doing, but it does a good job in doing something. I'll get into this. When you rate some of their lineups by certain metrics, it's going to return like the 99th percentile outcome. Okay. It's going to basically suggest, okay, in the Sims, this is the ceiling, and we're going to give it the ceiling this amount of times or whatever. And while that in and of itself is a good thing, right? You want to build based on ceiling. There's a certain dilemma on a card like this that Saber Sim, I don't think, and all the optimists are not going to do the greatest job figuring out. And that is the likelihood that a losing fighter could be in the optimal. Okay. It's not often that it happens, and you almost never have the Sims, project it that way. Okay. Like last week, for example, Jimmy Flick did actually make it into was it last week? Whatever it was. Jimmy Flick did make it into the optimal with 50 points, but in a loss. But none of the Sims really, were projecting it that way. Okay. So whenever you have a card where some fighters are live to make the optimal in a loss, Saber Sim doesn't do the greatest job with that. So because it's projecting for ceiling. And I'm talking about variations where these guys don't get ceiling and make the optimal. So anything that prioritizes ceiling is not going to capture, in my opinion, those variations. So the fighters that I think we're going to have to make some manual adjustments to, I think there are a couple that are very, very live to be in optimal lineups without even winning. Okay. And that would be the biggest example is Ryan Loder. Okay. Ryan Loder is 6,900 or whatever. He's not too likely to win, but first of all, when he does win, he's going to score a ton. Okay. Because there's no way he's winning without getting a bunch of takedowns. All right. But second of all, even when he loses, he's live to score an amount of points that could put him in the optimal because of his price. He's 6,800 or whatever it is. You give me like 35 or 40 points out of him, okay? If you give me like 35 or 40 points out of him, you are hold on a minute. The Derby's one of the Derby races going here. Let me just see what's happening. It looks as though, yep, the lot that we had won at 2-1. That was good. Okay. So Ryan Loader is somebody that you just have to use in more lineups than SaberSim will give you. Okay. You just have to. Or any optimizer, because he's just live to be in optimals, even in losses. The other two, then there are two more. Actually, there are three more. Rainier de Ritter, he is against Bo Nickel, and there are lots of variations where they get into these grappling wars where Ritter gets reversals and takedowns and this, that, and the other thing, but then ends up losing. Right? That just happens a lot, I think, in that fight. So at 7,100, I mean, you're going to want to have that in some variations. And two others, well, obviously Devison Figueiredo. I mean, him in a loss, he could score okay, but the thing is, he's going to be a little bit too popular. But he likewise is going to be very, very live to get in optimals. And remember, we're talking about a 12-fight card where there are certain situations where all the underdogs lose. And then if all the underdogs lose, you know what? You're going to have to find somebody that scored a decent amount, even in a loss. So Figueiredo. And the other one, who is, I think, I mean, a little sneaky here, is Juliana Miller. So this fight could end up being this could be a lot of different things, but there's a certain variation where it turns out to be a complete shit show, where both fighters go for takedowns, both are just reversals, both are just racking up these fantasy points, looking completely silly doing it. And whoever ends up winning is going to be in good shape. But even the person who ends up losing is going to be in decent shape as far as the optimal goes. I mean, first of all, I think it's certainly more likely that Miller gets there in a loss, of course, because of her price, than Petrovic. But I think that all those fighters I mentioned simply have to get bumps. Okay. We'll talk about one other, probably I think the most solid fighter on the card, because again, we're trying to think of variations where these fighters win and you're confident they're going to make the optimal. And the funny thing is, with these favorites, you're just not 100% confident. I mean, if you tell me for sure that you get a win out of Sandhagen or Bo Nickel or Mason Jones or Bokoev or Julian Robertson, that they're all going to make the optimal, that's not clear. Okay, it's not like any of them are live for like 130-point mean or anything like that. The one fighter who I think is just the most super solid, even kind of obvious play in DFS this week is going to be Miesha Tate. Okay. Miesha Tate is just super solid DFS because her path to victory is one which scores. Okay. That being her takedowns. And second of all, she does have a very high fight IQ, which indicates to me that she is actually going to be going for the takedowns, because that's actually a weird parlay that people forget about when they play these wrestlers. Number one, they have to, have the wrestling advantage. And number two, they have to actually go for the wrestling advantage. And you think that Miesha Tate with the high fight IQ is going to at least go for that. Now, is she going to win? I don't know. But the thing is, if in fact she does win, if in fact she does get the takedowns, it is probably going to involve, a score that's very, very good. Okay. So what we're going to do is we are going to build these lineups, and we're going to have to give these guys bumps. Okay. And then after we give these guys bumps, what we're going to do is we are going to run the portfolios or run the lineups that we came up with through this PayDirt portfolio manager, just to make sure that we're not overduping these things. Okay. So the first thing we want to do is I want to just double check my projections. All right. Let's just make sure that we're doing that nothing looks silly. And I already did this before, but I mean, I have Sandhagen at the top and then Mason Jones. I looked through this so many times. I'm pretty confident that the projections are pretty solid. Okay. And the ownership, I think, are pretty solid. I mean, I've done a lot of work on this. So we're just going to go ahead and just fire these. So we're going to build 5,000 lineups. And what we're going to do is rank them in different ways. Okay. Now remember, every ranking system or a sim system or whatever it is going to be based on the inputs you put in, right? What contest fields are we simming our lineups against? Okay, what lineup? What are we simming against? It's going to be based on what ownership you put in. If you sort these by MMA defaults, or if we sort them by other types of Saber Sim metrics, okay, that's later, All-Star. Then again, it's going to be based on the ownership you put in. So it is garbage in, garbage out. Okay. So what we're going to do is take a look and see like what these different things look like. So if we sort these things by MMA default, okay. All right. Sort these things by MMA default. What you'd be getting is something that's going to look really, really awkward. Okay. You're going to get 99% Dontel Mays. And again, it's probably not what we want to see, okay? Because the thing is, when you use MMA default, one of the problems with that is that it prioritizes 99th percentile outcomes. And like I said, you don't really need to prioritize 99th percentile outcomes, especially when there are variations where some of these fighters can get there without the 99th percentile outcome. So the MMA default system is not really kind of what I want to see, okay? But what we are interested in are the sims here, okay? So when we sort these things by ROI, specifically, I guess for the throwdown ROI, okay, you're getting kind of an exposure over here, okay, which is fine. I'm not really even gonna argue with it. But what I think that we have to do, unfortunately, is go in and manually upgrade the fighters that I talked about. So now this is kind of like art over science, right? So what kind of bump do we give them? I think we have to give them each at least a 10% bump. So we're going to give Juliana Miller, for example, a 28% bump. And then we're going to have to give Loader at least a 10% bump. So we'll give him minimum of 18. And then we're going to have to give DeRitter a 20%, 10% bump. So we'll give him at least 21. And then because we mentioned Figgy, we're going to have to give him at least a 10% bump. And he's currently a 0. so let's give him a 10% bump as well. Okay. And then we're going to apply these. Okay. And then we're sort of in business now. Okay. So what I've been kind of inclined to just kind of like go with this. But the one thing that I would love to do is just make sure that I'm not getting overly duped. Okay. So what I have to do is I want to make this a little bit more. Let's make it say 355 lineups. Okay. And then what we can do is I want to download these lineups like this, download to CSV. And then I want to test these to see how many dupes are projected. Okay, so first thing I want to look at is what SaberSim is going to project as far as their dupes go. Now, as I've kind of gone over before, SaberSim has definitely gotten better at this, but I still think that they really underproject the amount of dupes in some of these lineups, most of these lineups here. So this is throwdown. I mean, this is like ridiculous. Like it's projecting like 3 dupes for these, okay, which is obviously not the case, okay? So what we're going to do is we are now going to just put these 300 lineups in, okay, into the PayDirt portfolio manager tool. Let's go back to ROI here. Okay. What we're going to do, we'll delete this and we're going to save this. And these 355 lineups, whatever, we're going to put into the portfolio manager, tool. So I've already put up the projections, okay, and the CSV files. And so all I want to do is put this new 355 lineup set into here. Okay. And then we go to manage portfolio. And there's a couple of things that you can do here. First of all, you're going to want to select sharp for field here. And it doesn't matter what sport, honestly. And then what we want to do is just download the portfolio. So we have, the 355 lineups to choose from, and we're kind of hoping, see, look at all of these. We're looking at column J here. So it's not that bad, right? Filter. So it's not that bad, but we don't want to play. We don't want to play stuff with 10 dupes or whatever it is. So as a matter of fact, I mean, we could go ahead if we were really greedy and just trash all of these that project to have 10 dupes or higher, for example. And then how many are we left with? Now we're left with still with like 300. So we can even get greedier. I mean, why don't we just, what we're going to do, let's do this. Let's sort this by median. This is actually kind of fun. Or by win percentage or something like that. And then we could just manually see like which ones we want to get rid of. Like something that projects all the way down here that's also low duped, we could just kind of get rid of if we want. But I think that it's fair to say that the ones that are, say, like 9 duped or higher, it's probably no good. So let's get greedy today. What if we went, how many do we have here? Do we have enough to play? Oh, yeah, easily. So let's play only lineups that are projecting for 5 dupes or less, okay? And how many do we get from here? Now we're getting, okay, 261. But how do we play these? I mean, like, well, I think we should rank them in some way, okay? Either by win percentage or by even median projection, right? I mean, we're already, you know what I mean? I've sorted by dupe somewhat. So let's just take the top median projections, right? Given the fact we've already sorted these things in other ways. And we'll just cut this one. And then we'll go into DraftKings. Ooh, I hope it'll let me enter it. Yeah, okay, hold on. Edit entries. Download. And then we'll just put these in like this. Save and upload. The only thing that I would double check with, since I did mess around a little bit, is just to make sure that I was getting enough of those kind of key fighters, meaning Miller or Loader and Ritter. Because remember, I picked 500 out of there. So I want to see and make sure at least I'm getting something. So I will go into view exposure here, and let's just make sure that, let's say Miller, plenty of Miller, I have 30% of her. Loader, 41% of him. That's excellent, like that. And then I have Figueiredo, 33% of him. And then the Ritter, 51% of him. Oh, excellent. Okay, so this is really good. Okay, so what have we done here? Okay, what we've done is we've combined the different tools and the different skill sets, right? We put in what we thought were good projections to start off with. We built 5,000 lineups, which were good. Then we simmed them, where we took advantage of SaberSim's ability to compare our lineups in the contests that we're playing. And then what we did was we actually gave bumps to fighters that we felt SaberSim would ignore in some way, okay? And then what we did was we ran all that through the PayDirt portfolio manager tool. This way, we're trying to limit the amount of dupes. So what we didn't really do, okay, is care of who we had. You know, we made a couple of bumps, and aside from that, we just kind of let it do its thing, and I kind of like that. Okay, so that is how we're dealing with the whatchamacallit, with the throwdown. As far as the big buy-ins go, I mean, that's really outside, I think, the scope of this. Okay. But I do want to show you just a couple of things that you can do, like if you wanted to. Okay. So let's just say, and then we're going to do the betting stuff, which is kind of a shit show. But I did it. I put the bets in already. So I'm just completely going to be, if anybody tails any of these bets, you're really going to lose. I promise you. All right. So let's not DK entries. Hold on. I want to show you something you could do with SaberSim for a minute. So of the 5,000 lineups, let's how do we do this? Oh, okay. We're doing them all. Did we get them all? Let's see. Not that people know about this, but when you download from SaberSim, you get this big file where it allows you to sort by all these different metrics. So like if you wanted to sort by geo mean, which is another way to keep ownership low, you could do that. If you wanted to sort by MMA default, like I said, you can do that. If you wanted to sort by ROI, you could do that. If you wanted to, again, test these things for dupes over here, you could do that. And again, it's kind of up to you how deep into the weeds that you want to get. The other thing you can do, and then I'm going to do the betting stuff, is you can actually create your own way of ranking these things. So like, for example, right now, let's just say that you want to rate these things by, say, MMA default, which is the stock one. You can see what the formula is, right? It says formula is 0.5 times the sum of the projections plus 0.75 times, again, the 99th percentile outcome, which, again, is interesting. And then you'll see a ding by 0.1 times sum of adjusted ownership. Like if you wanted to, you could make your own metric and just increase or decrease these. Like, for example, I have the Sheets default one where if I wanted to, I could run, and this one is actually pretty much the same, except it is dinging at 0.3 times sum of adjusted ownership. So these are all the different ways that you can play this. Again, as far as the big buy-ins go, I really think that, you know, the solid plays of the day, and it's so funny, I don't even know how much of Misha Tate I have. I'm well under on her in the lottery, but I can't imagine not having her in the big buy-ins. It's just such a super solid, strong play. And that's pretty much all I have for today as far as lineup construction. Now, as far as betting goes, for those of you that really came here expecting it like good bets, you came to the wrong place. Because the way I approach UFC betting is very different. I am just so jaded and poisoned from a whole lifetime of dealing with sports betting and the stock market, whatever, that I feel as if so much of everything that people talk about is baked into the price, that to be able to just straight up bet and try to do better than the line is just an exercise in futility. But what I am really good at doing is figuring out what everybody else is doing and everybody else is thinking. And the thing about UFC, as I've talked about in previous videos, it is a sport that is so designed for storytelling, okay? More than almost any other sport that you can bet on, people not only just say, oh, I like the Jets, but it's like Peterson is going to come and take down Dontel Mays, and Dontel Mays is going to allow these takedowns, and Peterson is going to win either by submission or by decision. But if, in fact, he cannot get the takedowns, then Dontel Mays is certainly going to knock him out or something like that, you know? And the thing about markets and pricing and things like that, all I can tell you is this. Well, I can tell you more, but what I'm going to tell you today is that if there is something that is an extraordinarily easy story to tell, I'm not telling you it's not likely to win. I am telling you that it is almost always overvalued, okay? The easier the story is to tell, whether it be in a MMA fight or a stock market pick or anything like that where there's a vig involved or when there are markets involved, the easier the story it is to tell to your 5-year-old, the more overvalued that bet has to be. Okay, so and UFC being a sport itself ripe with chaos, it's an incredible thing that people can be so confident in what's going to happen in that ring because of what incredible human beings and storytellers we are. So what I like to do is I just basically just throughout the course of the week, I get a really good sense of what the easy story to tell is, and we just basically fade it all. You know, now I'm not saying that people are not good at this. As a matter of fact, there's a guy who I follow. I actually buy his picks, and I don't. I buy them for different reasons. I buy them so that I can actually get maybe a little bit of an edge in DFS. Like maybe if I think that he thinks the like an inside the distance line is wrong or whatever it is, I'll apply it to maybe DFS a little bit. I don't really outright tail his picks. This is just not my thing. I just feel it's just so hard to get an edge here. So what I do is I have my own way of doing things. But one thing I will do is I back up everything I say. So let's just go through this, and this is fun stuff. I appreciate everybody coming, by the way. So here are the rules for MMA contrarian betting. Rule number one, we are going to be betting one thing every single fight, and that is not the best money management system in the world, but we don't care. Second of all, we are going to be betting one unit on every fight, and that, of course, is not the best money management system in the world either, but we don't care. And for me, one unit is going to be exactly $180, 10 times high. Good luck. And again, for me, I think it's healthy when someone is going to tell you who they're playing to say exactly how much. I know people like to talk in terms of units, and yes, my units are different than other people's, and I have different bankrolls than other bettors or whatever it is. But I don't know. I just think it's cool. Instead of people saying, well, I'm putting half a unit on this, I'd like to know how much money they're putting on it, if you want to know the truth. So I am putting $180, and I already put the bets in. And the other thing that I think is cool is that if I'm presuming that I'm going to lose all 12 fights on the card, okay? So if that's the case, I am going to need to, the first 11 fights on the card I'm going to lose. So the 12th fight, the main event, I have to play something that is going to be, that's going to get me 12 to 1. All right. So that's what we're doing. And we certainly, and again, you want to tell me, great. I'll certainly promise you this. You're playing stuff that no one else is playing. And I also will promise you this, that you're not playing anything obvious, which means you actually have a shot of it not being overvalued. All right. So here we go. First fight of the night. And this is the contrarian betting breakdown. First fight of the night. And you'll have to forgive my sarcasm. Ivana Petrovic versus Juliana Miller. So Ivana Petrovic certainly has Juliana Miller covered. First of all, she's much better at takedowns, and Juliana Miller is prone to give up takedowns. I mean, she has no problem working off her back. So we have a real style advantage for openers. Second of all, Juliana Miller just basically sucks, okay? She came in as a 5-1 favorite a couple of fights ago and got dusted pretty much by Veronica Hardy. Then she came out in a first round and got KO'd by Santos. Now taking a year and a half off with injuries, okay? So this is really, really simple, right? So Petrovic takes her to the mat, and what's-her-name allows it to happen, and that's the end of the game. So we are not allowed to bet that. What we are going to do is do the opposite, sort of. One thing that I love doing is when there is a fight that we know is going to the mat, you know what you do? You bet the other person by submission, okay? Because the only way anybody gets submission really is if people start grappling, and if the other person is competent at all, you're gonna see a lot of times that person get the submission. So I kind of got a little bit scared. I normally would have just played Juliana Miller by submission here, but I did see that there were certain variations where she was able to get knockouts in this variation. So we just bet. Let me just find it. Yeah. So I will share my screen so we show what we have here. So Juliana Miller by TKO or submission plus 500 for 180. Let's go. Okay. Next fight, Dontel Mays versus Thomas Peterson. Another absolute lock. Okay. Because not only does Peterson really, really good at wrestling, But Dontel Mays is just the worst at it. Okay. All Dontel Mays does is give up takedowns, and all Peterson does is get them. So this is basically free money. So why don't we just play Peterson either by decision or by sub? Well, good idea. That's why everybody's doing it, and that's why the price is so bad. So what we're going to do, of course, we're going to play Dontel Mays by KO plus 500 for 180. So if you're tailing me, I hope now you are 0-2. Okay. All right. Next fight. Okay, this is the next fight that I really don't have much of an opinion on, I have to say. I only did it just to follow the rules here. And the only thing I came up with was I heard more stuff about Quang Lee than Bolaños, so I just played Bolaños minus the 122. So this is not particularly contrarian or anything like whatever, but I just couldn't find anything else, and I wanted to stick to my rules. So I played one with Bolaños. All right, Jillian Robertson against Marina Rodriguez, another just easy breezy one to analyze. You know, Jillian Robertson, you know, a big time submission grappler, easy to get her takedowns, and Marina Rodriguez, she is just cannot stuff them at all. Okay, so and what happens is she just gives up the takedowns, spends the time on her back. So Jillian Robertson is going to grind her out, either get a sub, which is kind of hard against Rodriguez, or maybe get a decision. So what are we going to do? Marina Rodriguez inside the distance. So Marina Rodriguez by KO or submission plus 900. Okay. I have to say, Jillian Robertson, I really hope you get these takedowns, because if you don't, this thing's going to be live. All right. Next, Ryan Loder versus Azmat Bukayev, whatever. Even though Ryan Loder is known for being a good wrestler, you have this kind of Dagestani, a mystique of this guy coming out of the Russian mountains and being just way too skilled, both on the feet and maybe even on the ground. So Loder, even though he might get some takedowns or whatever, he's just going to get overwhelmed here. So, I mean, Loder's one path is probably just to take him down and hold him down. But in reality, probably Bukayev has him covered everywhere. So, of course, you can't bet any of this. So, what we're going to do? Oh, Loder by TKO or submission, plus the 700. Easy breezy. All right. Misha Tate versus Viana Santos. Now, again, now you'll know. Now you can get into my head a little bit. I just went through why I thought Misha Tate was a super duper solid DFS play. Why? Because she has a real easy path to victory. That being, okay, taking Yana Santos down and keeping her down. Okay. Now, just because that is the easy path to victory, and just because, as we said, she's probably going to attempt to do that, that doesn't mean that it's going to be successful. Okay. All it meant is that when she is successful, she's going to score a lot. And all I've been hearing all week is that it's a match made for her. It's a setup fight for her. I've heard all about how smart she is on Celebrity Big Brother. Easy game. So what are we going to do? Oh, let's try again. Santos by TKO or submission. I hope Misha Tate gets those takedowns, because if not, this plus 900 is going to be live. Jeremy Stevens versus Mason Jones. Maybe this one isn't as sharp as I thought it was, but nonetheless, Mason Jones is coming off of several fights where he had multiple takedowns, 8 takedowns, 6 takedowns, or whatever. And Jeremy Stevens, the only thing he has going for him really is that he has all this knockout power, and he also has been doing bare knuckle fighting. So you'd like to think that Mason Jones, that he'd probably want to avoid the bare knuckle fighting, you know, and probably just get him to the ground. So what you probably not expect is Mason Jones to actually win like a firefight. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to play Mason Jones by KO, actually, at plus 165. Now, again, it's a little not as sharp as I think, because, yes, he's going to be able to win this way also by getting takedowns and ground and pound, but I think this is pretty easy. All right. Smotherman versus Seide. Honestly, no real opinion. I went back and forth. I tried to convince myself that I was being sneaky by playing Smotherman. But what at the end of the day, what I ended up deciding on was this idea that although Smotherman is very prone to getting takedowns, all I've heard this week is how Saidi just doesn't go for them. As a matter of fact, he did try. He was like 0 for 8 this last time. So he's probably just going to try to keep this fight at range. So I just took a shot here and played Saidi by submission. The idea being that if, in fact, again, if everybody's right, that Smotherman's not, is easy to take down, well, maybe Saidi's got Misha Tate like fight IQ. I don't know. So we played him plus 1,200 by sub. Daniel Marcos versus what's his name? Montel Jackson. Okay, so this one's kind of interesting. You have Daniel Marcos. He's 19-0, and yet he's a big underdog. I don't know. I don't know if I could go to the water cooler the next day and say that I didn't play the 19-0 guy as an underdog. And all I'm getting is Montel Jackson this, Montel Jackson that, with the reach and all this stuff. The only thing that I have heard is that maybe Daniel Marcos might be able to, I don't know, outvolume him down the stretch. What I haven't heard is what we're betting. Marcos inside the distance plus the 500. So 1,800 to win, 180 to win 900. Okay, Bo Nickel versus Rainier de Ritter. Okay, everybody's a little bit too sneaky for their own good here. Okay, this is to me like I don't know. People are saying this fight is just a fait accompli. You have Bo Nickel is going to do exactly what he did last fight. That is, he's going to do what he did against Paul Craig, not get involved in the grappling game. Okay, because he was afraid of what Paul Craig might be able to do, being an expert grappler. He kept Paul Craig on the feet, and even though the crowd didn't like it, it was probably a high IQ move, and that's what people are suggesting he's going to do this week. That de Ritter, he has some grappling, but there's not no way, but it's unlikely that Bo Nickel's even going to get involved in this. But what did we hear? I mean, we heard that Bo Nickel was kind of like booed or whatever by the fans. I don't know, man. I think he might go for this. I think he might go back to this wrestling game here. And if that's the case, I mean, give me this. So we have Rainier de Ritter by sub plus 800. All right. Santiago Ponzinibbio versus Daniel Rodriguez. Honestly, no bet there. I did something just because we played the fight to go the distance. Or the fight not to go the distance, because I've heard that both fighters are very durable and that, it's probably going to go the distance. So we went to not go the distance. That's pretty much it. Nothing really big there. So we get to the last fight on the board. And trust me, you go through all these fights and all these bets again, I promise you, you're going to want to puke, and you're probably going to end up going 0-11. Maybe we get lucky and like the Bolaños minus 122 wins, or the Ponzinibbio fight wins. Maybe we get some money back or whatever. But the reality is we're going to need the 11-1 or whatever. So we have Devinson Figueiredo against Corey Sandhagen. And we have to start by seeing what's 12-1. And the good news is that what I wanted to do anyway is already 12-1. All right. So you have both these guys are good grapplers. All right. Corey Sandhagen, as a matter of fact, is much more of a striker than he is a grappler, but he was able to get takedowns against Marlon Vera and against forgot his other one, but he was able to get the takedowns there. He wasn't able to do anything with them, really, but he did get the takedowns. And I have a feeling that that's what he's going to probably try to do here. But you know what? Figueiredo is a grappler himself. I would say he's as a good, if not better, grappler than Sandhagen. So if this fight gets to the mat, I'm going to be forced to try it. So we are going to play Figueiredo buy sub plus 1,600. So again, what you've seen here are examples of me attacking DFS in two ways. This fight card in two ways. One, being smart with my DFS breakdown, and two, with me being stupid with the betting breakdown. Nonetheless, true DFS is true transparency, so you got to see everything exactly that I am doing. I appreciate everybody joining me from any of these streams. And that's it. Hope everybody enjoys the card. Hope everybody enjoys the Kentucky Derby. And actually, I did have my Kentucky Derby picks on my YouTube channel as well. And we'll see how well those do. Thank you very much. And